I'm Easter Day, and welcome to another episode of Eye of the Storm Astrology. Today, I'm going to be doing a chart breakdown of Mahatma Gandhi. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so the chart of Gandhi, let me go ahead and get this pulled up here on my screen for everyone to see. And Gandhi has a very interesting chart. And in analyzing his charts, not just his birth chart, but also like his D10 and his other divisional charts, it's very easy to see why he had the karmas that he did, why he ended up doing things that he did in his life. So I'll go ahead and be doing a breakdown of this birth chart. I'll also look at the chart of the D10, the Great Success, or many people refer to that as the chart of career. It's what we're known for in the world. It's also, you could look at it as kind of like a chart of fame, just what we're really known for. In short, the D10 chart is where we're looking at the 10th house in much more depth. So starting at the birth chart, in his Lagna, there's something very, very interesting to see right off the bat. And it is that he has his ascendant in Chitra Nakshatra, which I'll explain in a second why that's such an important thing. And then his sun in Hasta Nakshatra. Now he's a Virgo ascendant. So Hasta is the nakshatra that's like right in the middle of Virgo, and it's symbolized by the hands. So that's where his sun is. And Chitra bridges between the end of Virgo and the beginning of Libra. So it has some interesting qualities to it. So let's talk about this Lagna first. Being a Virgo, we can see Gandhi was going to be a highly intelligent person. Virgo being disposited by Mercury, which is our communication, our intellect, our logic, really left brain functions. Early on in his life, he was actually a lawyer. Many people don't know that, but he was actually a lawyer. He was a member of the Bar Association, and it was through some experiences that, specifically an event he had in South Africa and some other experiences, that ended up making him see like why that wasn't the specific path for him, and he ended up shifting and changing his approach to things. This came through this process of irritation, though, would be something to see. Now, Virgos are, being that it's the internal expression of Mercury, they take all that analytical ability of Mercury and they go inward with it. So they become very good at receiving and listening, to information. Because of that, they're very good at observing problems, seeing what all the factors and the problems are, and then figuring out how to replace this. A big theme of Gandhi's life was problem solving. In fact, that was the theme of his life. So being a Virgo Lagna here makes perfect sense. Now, the nakshatra of Chitra that his Lagna in, Chitra is a very interesting nakshatra because, first off, it is symbolized by a pearl or a gemstone. So you can see that a pearl and a gemstone are both things that they are formed first through a process of pressure and time and irritation is going on in there. With a pearl, it actually starts by that animal getting a grain of sand in it, and then it secretes a liquid that eventually forms around that sand, whatever the irritant is that got in there, and then that forms the pearl. Okay. So Chitra Nakshatra will have this theme of having to have something that irritates it, but that irritation leads to it growing a pearl. Or just like with the earth, when it forms a gemstone, that those are formed whenever, there are massive disruptive events in the geology going on, and minerals are forced together under pressure and heat and time, and then they're broken up and moved to the surface, and we end up with gemstones through that process. The same kind of theme we see going on here. Chitra is a nakshatra that has that theme. Another reason why it is very interesting is because of all the 27 nakshatras, and for those of you who aren't familiar, nakshatras are lunar constellations that we use in Vedic astrology. Of the 27 nakshatras, 3 of them are made of a single yogatara, or identified by a single yogatara, which is a single star. Why is this important? because these three nakshatras, anytime you see them in a chart, and especially the more you see them repeated, the more this theme is going to play out. But these nakshatras are very unique. The people that have these nakshatras are very unique people. They're going to shine like that individual star. They're not going to do it in the ways that the other ones do it. They're going to do it in their own unique way. That's very much a strong theme with them. Now, these three nakshatras are Ardra nakshatra, Swati nakshatra, and Chitra nakshatra. So the more you see these repeated in a chart, the more you're going to see this theme of that person being kind of very unique, weird, strange, whatever it is. They're going to be very special in the way that they are as a human being. So with Gandhi, a huge irritation for him that he saw happening was that he saw his own country, India. So again, this is Virgo is an internal expression. So this was going on in his own country, and it was something he felt inside. He saw it struggling, and this was an irritation for it. And in a way, you could see that Bharat, India, had its hands bound. Herself was bound. Her soul was bound, so to speak. Because we have Sun and Hasta here in the hands. So you could almost see a binding of the hands here, and that was an irritation for him. But another thing Sun and Hasta could symbolize, when we just look at it from his own individual perspective as a soul, who he was, is that he had the gift of being able to heal, and the way he did that was through things like the hands. So that could include things like writing. Like I said, as before, he was a lawyer, so he really tried to push forward in like the political process for India taking over her own independence, and then even within that, trying to resolve the disputes between different factions, between Muslims and Hindus, et cetera, when people were fighting. He was trying to get people to join hands together. He would say that a lot. We need to join together. That was a big theme of his. That was really what he was known for. So this is something that we can see here. Another very interesting thing to note is to next look at the dispositor of Virgo, which is going to be Mercury. Well, Mercury is sitting over here in Libra, which it does very, very well in Libra. It does very well in the second house here. And it's also sitting with Venus, who is the ruler, the dispositor of Libra. So anytime a planet is sitting in the same house with the dispositor of that sign there, it's going to be a very strong placement. And Mars is also here. Now, Venus and Mars are both in the Vishaka Nakshatra, and Mercury is in Swati. So first, let's look at Mercury, since it's the dispositor. Now, if you remember just a minute ago, I mentioned Swati Nakshatra in regards to being one of those three nakshatras that shows someone will be very unique. Now, some other themes of Swati are that it really is a nakshatra that is about freedom. Swati people do not like to be tied down. They don't want to feel like they have a ball and chain on them. If they're in a relationship and someone is not like accusing them of things or not being trusting, etc., that's really going to bug them as a person. Honesty is a huge thing for Swati people. In fact, they can be very good salesmen, very good marketers, but they're the type of salesmen that are going to be extremely honest in the way that they go about approaching things. Especially with like a Mercury and Swati here in Libra, so well placed that there was going to be honesty in the communication. That would have been a big theme. And Swati is an nakshatra that it is all about communication, but specifically that honest communication, being the honest salesman, bringing the honest message, the real truth of things, trying to communicate for a real reason of bringing people together, having people achieve something. Because keep in mind, this is going on in the Rashi and the sign of Libra. So it's going to deal with relationships and bringing people together. It can also deal with contracts and these type of things. And this was absolutely something we could see going on as he was moving forward, helping India regain her sovereignty from the British. These were definitely things he was doing. He was trying to bring different groups together. He was really this mediator. He was this person who was trying to negotiate and keep the peace between everybody, and he was doing so in a very strategic way. Swati is a nakshatra that can be very strategic. So when we see Mercury in Swati here, we see that his communication, the words he spoke with, this was what he did. So a big theme of his life, of his first house, his sense of self, what he cared about, had to deal with this communication. And what was he talking about? Well, he's talking about the things that irritated him, the problems that he saw in his own country, the things that upset him as a human being, as a soul, that he could not tolerate. And he says, I'm going to speak about this because this bondage is wrong. Keep in mind, the second house is also the house of values, of our morality, because it is what supports our first house. So when you get the ruler of the first house in the second house, that person is going, their sense of self is going to be very strong, very supported. And whatever planet and sign that is playing on, being played between with these two, is going to have a major effect in the person's personality and who they are, and what their values are. So we can see that his values were communicating about freedom here. Now, something else we can see real quick. Sorry, 1 second. Venus and Mars are in Vishaka. Now, as I mentioned before, Venus being the ruler or the dispositor of Libra. So that's going to be very good there. It's going to make it to where, as a Libra person, relationships, like he those are extremely important to him, and he wants them to be healthy relationships. Those were very important goals for him. Then we can see Mars being here as well. This is going to bring cleverness to this. This is going to make him take actions on those things, going to make him very forward going, and add the willpower to this. So not only does he care about these things, but he has the willpower to be committed to them. This is what we can see when Mars comes into this conjunction. Now, Vishaka Nakshatra is an interesting one because it is ruled by the deity Indragni. Now, Indragni it can be seen as one deity, but is also a mixture of two. It's Indra and Agni. So Indra is a storm, a thunder god, as well as the ruler of gods, and Lord Agni is fire. Now, of all the Vedic deities, these are probably some of the, not only the two most mentioned, but specifically when it comes to ritual, these things, like anytime there's a Vedic ritual, Lord Agni is supposed to be invoked first. These type of things, very, very important deities. So this is a nakshatra that deals with important people. Vishaka nakshatra people will be important people. It is symbolized by a victory arch. For those of you who don't know what a victory arch is back when there were, empires and things, whenever they had a massive victory, a massive military campaign, they would commemorate the battle by building this large arch. This arch would have scenes depicted of the battle, et cetera, et cetera. It's a giant thing to ego, essentially, is what it is. But in short, they would parade through this arch as a symbol of, hey, we went through the struggle and we've come out on the other side victorious. Okay. Vishaka Nakshatra will deal with this theme of, really, they need to have a goal. They need to have a battle. They need to have something to fight for. They're extremely strategic, very, very strategic in how they go about getting what they need. Because Indra is here, and Indra is very, very crafty. Probably one of the craftiest of all the gods. In fact, the reason why he has his position, why he has his throne, is due to his cleverness. Now, our strengths can be our weaknesses, and our weaknesses are strengths. So that's something to remember with Vishaka too. Sometimes you got to make sure not to be too clever with yourself. But Vishaka Nakshatra is all about having this goal and achieving a victory. Now, something else it wants to do is that it is about uniting opposites. The way it achieves its victory is it brings opposites together. So we have Lord Indra, the thunder god, we have water, and then we have Lord Agni, which is fire, them coming together nakshatras are ruled by one deity usually. So there's few nakshatras that are associated with more than one deity. Vishaka Nakshatra, I would say, is probably the most prominent in the sense of the importance of the deities associated with it. Both of them are extremely important in the Vedic tradition. So this is a theme we'll see with Vishaka. So Vishaka, it needs rain to meet fire. It needs rain to meet fertile soil. It wants to grow something. It wants to produce a crop. And in order to do that, what do you have to do as a farmer? You need the opposite elements to come together. You need earth, and you need water, and you need air, and you need fire. All of these to come together in the right combination so you can grow crops. Vishaka is looking for this thing. So they're very good at seeing that this person has this gift. This person has this gift. We have this goal we need to accomplish. So if we each do these things, we can accomplish our goal. That's what Vishaka does. And look at what Gandhi did. He went and he specifically was trying to work with different groups. Even the British, he was trying to work with in a peaceful way as much as he could. But and you can even say in his stance of nonviolence, we can see this with a Mars and Libra. Now, this is not always the case with Mars and Libra. Like personally, I also have both my Mars and Mercury and Libra with Sun and Moon there too. I am not a person of complete nonviolence at all. That would not be my approach. But this is something that we can sometimes see come in. That was his strategy, was to use nonviolence as a way of showing what the violence of the aggressor. Know that you're the one in the wrong for doing this to us. So he did it not from a place of like cowardice or fear. He did it from a very brave place, but he did it for a strategic reason. And what did that strategy lead to? It allowed him to get friends, which got his cause support. And this is what Indra does in the mythology. He speaks to whenever he's originally trying, because he wasn't the Indra, understand this, it is a title. Okay, so it's like a king or a president or something like that, right? Different deities can hold the title of Indra at different times. Originally, who is Indra now was just a thunder deity, just a storm god, and he moved into the position through. I won't get super deep into the mythology or anything, but in short, he was very strategic in the way he went about getting the throne. That he went around and he talked to other people. He spoke to other people to get their support that allowed support of his cause so he could then take the throne. Gandhi did the same thing here. He went and he spoke to other people in a very strategic way. He showed the wrongs of his enemy and what they were doing, how that was wrong. He spoke about it in an honest way and in a strategic way. And that actually led to India then being able to do what it needed to take its sovereignty back, to take her destiny or soul back into her own hands. That would be another way we could see this sun in Hasta Nakshatra in the ascendant. Is not only did he take his own soul back into his own hands, but he helped India do the same. So very, very interesting things to see going on here between this first house and second house. Some very interesting yogas at play here. And I won't get like too off into yogas. That could be like if you guys are liking this and you do want me to do a whole study of the yogas, like just analyzing those and the results of those in Gandhi's chart, let me know in the comments, and that's something I can do in a future episode. We can always revisit this. The next little thing I want to see that's super interesting here is this Neptune retrograde in Pisces in the Revati Nakshatra. So Neptune, as I've spoke about before, I like to look at it. I like to look at the outer planets from kind of two main perspectives. The first being the perspective of the Trimurti. Uranus being Brahma, creation, Neptune being Vishnu, preservation, and Pluto being Shiva, destruction. To keep it nice and simple, right? So when Neptune goes retrograde, we can see that there's something, the preservation of what was going on. It's like India was looking back into her past, looking back into that immense spiritual wisdom we had here. And I think it's very interesting that it's Neptune, and I associate this Vishnu because Vishnu, and if you understand Vedic mythology and philosophy, Vishnu, Bhagavan, all attractive, is everything. And then we have it in a sign like Pisces, very spiritual sign. In fact, Vishnu creates the universe from reclining on a serpent known as Sislesha, and he does so in the infinite ocean. This is Pisces. Okay. Now, what is Vishnu? Vishnu is also a guide and a shepherd. This is Revati Nakshatra. Revati Nakshatra is all about people who are guides, who are shepherds. It's the last of the 27 nakshatras. Revati people are people with a lot of wisdom. And it's ruled by the deity Pushan, who is the god of shepherds, of cattle, these type of things. Now, some of the things that Gandhi did was actually encourage Indians to not only take back their own resources, that included their own cattle and sheep and resources like this in the country to be using. But he really referenced them to, he guided them to their spiritual resources. It was a thing of, no, we need to preserve our culture. We need to preserve our history and this deep spiritual wisdom we have. You know, Bharat, India, has one of the deepest, richest spiritual traditions and cultures overall of really the whole in the entire world. Like there, it's such a vast place with so much knowledge and wisdom that has come from it. It's really mind-boggling. And even through over 1300 1400 years of persecution, first through the force of Islam, and then later on through Christianity and the British, they still retained that knowledge and that wisdom. So this Neptune retrograde in Revati, we can see here that this was a thing that he tapped into and he looked back on. And then the other way I look at the outer planets is as generational indicators, as well as we can see them working on it more of an unconscious level. You know, the visible grahas, the planets that we can see with our eyes, with observation, without assistance. These are planets that work more on a surface level: Sun, Moon, Mars. We can look out and see these visibly. But the outer grahas, the outer planets, we don't see them with our naked eye. There's something that works more on a subconscious or unconscious level. So we can see this was a deep, maybe even unconscious or subconscious draw that he had towards us. And it wasn't just him. Generationally, with Neptune being retrograde in Pisces here, all of India, everybody, the whole world this was a time for this to look at it. So it's no wonder that these were part of the events that helped lead India to regaining that sovereignty and being able to step back into a place that is recognized for having the wisdom that it really does, instead of a place that was just exploited for the massive amount of wealth that it produced. I think a lot of people don't actually realize just how immensely wealthy India was and is to this day. A lot of the wealth that the Maharajas had, it was insane, and Britain very much plundered that. Or they tried their very best to take as much as they could. Another interesting thing we can see here is that his moon is in the 11th house of gains, but more importantly, the social network circle. It's with Rahu, but it's in the sign of Cancer, so it's in its own sign. Now it's in the nakshatra of Asalesha, and Rahu is in the nakshatra of Pusha. So what can we see here? Some very interesting things. First off, moon being in the sign of Cancer, it's in its own sign. It's doing very well in the 11th house of gains. It can do well there, but it's going to make him a person who is very nurturing and very caring. Now, the nakshatra that this is in, Asalesha nakshatra, this is an interesting nakshatra because it is a nakshatra that is greatly misunderstood. Probably of all of them, I would say the most misunderstood nakshatra. It is ruled by the Nagas, which are very misunderstood beings. So it's no wonder why this nakshatra is misunderstood. But it has this association with serpents. So it deals with secret knowledge, hidden wisdom, occult knowledge, these type of things. But it can also deal with medicines, poisons, because what do serpents do? They have poison. And serpents will give you a certain amount of poison, a certain dosage, depending on what they're wanting to do. And the amount of dosage could be the difference between, death or medicine, right? Asalesha people have this ability to measure and dose medicines. You'll see this a lot with people with Asalesha nakshatra. That's something you can see coming in. But Asalesha nakshatra, like a serpent, is one that goes through many transformations. They have to shed their skin. And why does a snake shed their skin? They do so they can grow. So for Gandhi, his mind, his emotions, he would have went through many different periods where he became reclused, withdrawn, and he pulled away from everybody. Like a serpent, whenever they go into this state, they find a hole to hide in, and their eyes will actually fog over, right? So this is actually the time they're most dangerous and most likely to strike. So these people, Asalesha people, will go through transformations in their life where they have a certain identity, a certain skin, but eventually they outgrow that and they have to go through a transformation. This transformation happens through a period, and during this period, they go through a state of isolation where they're growing their new sense of self, they're developing their new ego, they're developing their new identity. And usually when they go through these transformations, they also change who they're associating with. And this is a big reason why they're misunderstood as a nakshatra. They will associate with people when it is relevant to do so because they have a goal to accomplish. And that doesn't mean they're just trying to use people. They have to push off what's around them. Like a serpent, it pushes off the earth around it with its belly. That's the way it moves. And they have to keep moving forward. Salisha people are very forward going. They have a goal they want to achieve. Now, his moon is in Pada 4 here, which is a Gandanta point. And for those of you who don't know, a Gandanta point in Vedic astrology, Gandanta means not. So as we move through the 27 nakshatras, most of the signs are bridged by a nakshatra, as I was speaking about earlier with Chitra nakshatra being the bridge between Virgo and Libra. Well, in Cancer, it ends in a Salisha nakshatra, and then Leo begins with a completely new nakshatra. So the fourth pada of Salisha and the first pada of Leo in Maga are known as a Gandanta point. Now, there are 3 Gandanta points throughout the entire chart, and it's going to be anywhere there's a transition between a water sign and a fire sign, or between fire and water, water and fire. So between Pisces and Aries, between Scorpio and Sagittarius, and between Cancer and Leo. But a Gandanta point, if you have this in your chart, it means that there is a karmic knot there. There's something you were supposed to do. There's some heavy karma you need to unravel. And this doesn't necessarily mean karma is not a bad thing. You as a soul could just have a really big thing that you wanted to achieve. So you made sure to align something in your chart that would make that manifest in your life. This is a Gandanta point. So Moon being a Gandanta, his mind being at a Gandanta point, means that karmically he had a lot of emotional energy, a lot of thought towards how am I going to help society at large? How do we gain our independence and our freedom? How do we nurture ourselves? Because this is all Cancer in the 11th house. This is what this deals with. But he went through many transformations and periods in his life. Now, something else very interesting to note here is that one of the ways he achieved what he needed to do, if like people in India, if they were fighting each other and you had the different factions and things, Muslims and Hindus fighting amongst each other, he would do something very unique. He would starve himself. He would fast. And he would say, I refuse to eat until you stop this bickering. What do serpents do? Serpents don't need to eat very often. They can go back into themselves, into a meditative state. They recluse themselves away, and they don't eat when they're going through this transformation. That's exactly what he would do. He would pull himself away into a private, he'd become a recluse. He would go through a transformation because as he was fasting, he was losing weight. He got to the point that people thought he was going to die. And it took him saying, I'm willing to starve myself to death if you don't stop this. And he was that committed to us. This is because it's in a Gandanta point. Now, what else is also adding to this? A few different things here. Rahu, being the north node of the moon, our desires. What Rahu does is not only is he chameleon, so he takes on the form of whatever is going on here, but he blows things up in a big way. So you get Rahu in the 11th house, you're going to get big wealth, large social network circles, lots of recognition, these type of things going on, especially if it's well placed here. Now, normally Rahu and the moon aren't really friends, so this can definitely cause some mental illness, issues, depressions, things like this. A person can experience being fooled and tricked in their life, and this was something Gandhi did experience, and that did cause him a lot of emotional distress. But at the same time, moon being in Cancer in its own sign, that's going to help it, because moon's doing well here. It's strong. So Rahu's going to transform into that and help that. But there still will have been some of that affliction of a Rahu moon conjunction. Now, Rahu's in Pushya Nakshatra. Now, Pushya Nakshatra, if you wanted a really good way to describe it, is that if you wanted to describe the maternal energy summarized in a nakshatra, this is Pushya Nakshatra. It is symbolized by the first being a lotus, but another being a cow's udder. You think about a cow, like it, to get the milk from it to make cheese or to make butter, other ghee, other things. You don't have to kill the cow for that. In fact, if you do that, you won't get the milk. The cow will just eat grass, and then you can go milk the cow, and then it just keeps doing its thing, and it just keeps giving you, and it's not asking for anything back. It's that love of a mother, that giving, that nourishing of the feminine that gives and gives and gives and doesn't really ask for anything back. Gandhi wasn't asking for people to stop doing that for himself. He was asking them to do that for India, for the greater good of all of them. Let's see beyond our differences here and do what we need to nourish ourselves as a country and as a nation, as a people. So we can see this going on. Rahu is also very unique things. So it made him go about, what did I mention before? He went about achieving what he needed to, not only in a very unique way, not only was his message, his method, everything he did very unique, but even in regards to, like I said, going on fasting and being willing to fast to the point that he could lose his life as a way of getting people to stop fighting. Now, besides just the conjunction going on here, if you see this BP in the chart, this stands for Bingu Brindu, which is known as the destiny point in Vedic astrology. This is one point that I like to have in the chart, as well as where this AL is. That's the Aruda Lagna, another awesome point to study in the chart. But the Bingu Brindu is a point of destiny. It's something that we need to achieve in our life. And this can be something that is a single event or over a period of our life. It can be either. But we can see that this Bingu Brindu is going on in a Slisha Nakshatra. So not only did he have Gandanta point here, heavy karma with this moon, but his destiny point being here. And then Rahu is our desires. Rahu's the reason we incarnate. It's a major area to look to see what you wanted to achieve as a soul in this lifetime. Very, so we have three major different types of karmic or destiny type of points lining up here, showing that his service to the 11th house, his service to society as a whole, as a nurturer, as someone who cared, was shown for coming at achieving things through emotions, but in very unique ways. This was something that he came here to do as a soul. Something else to note here is one more thing with this Rahu Ketu axis. Anytime you have Ketu in the 5th and Rahu in the 11th, that is one of the best access for the nodes to be in. Rahu in the 11th does very good because it's our desires and it's in the house of gains. K2 does very good because it's where we have a mastery of things, a past life knowledge, these type of things. And you put it in the 5th house of education and a person becomes very, very good at learning. Anytime you see someone with K2 in the 5th and Rahu in the 11th, they're going to be an extremely intelligent person. They'll probably have a gift with different languages, ancient mantras, reading ancient scripts. They'll be interested in philosophy, psychology, these type of things, and they'll be able to just study and learn on their own, especially K2 in Capricorn like here. He's going to be very grounded in the way that he can learn, the way he can educate himself. So we can see why he was drawn towards being a lawyer early on. But the next thing I want to look at here is this Jupiter retrograde in the sign of Aries, in the 8th house, and in Kritika Nakshatra. Pluto is also retrograde here. So we can see Jupiter, the guru, whenever he goes retrograde, a person is meant to question things. They're meant to question belief systems. Now you get Jupiter in Aries like this, which in fact, Jupiter is in Aries right now. So very similar energy going on in the world now as what was going on whenever Gandhi was born. But Jupiter retrograde is going to make people question teachers, question their belief systems. And when it's in a sign like Aries, they're going to do so in a fiery way. They're willing to fight things that are controlling them. And Kritika Nakshatra is symbolized by a blade or a sword. So it deals with war. It deals with cutting things. It's very critical. In fact, that's where we get the word critical from, is Kritika. Krit means to cut in Sanskrit. That's where critical comes from. So Kritika Nakshatra is very critical. So here we see people are becoming very critical of the gurus, the people they're listening to. And they were also very critical of the military, the British military. That's who was really controlling India. Originally it was like the companies that came in, the East India Trading Company, and those, and they used those to gain a foothold, and eventually, through military force had this. Well, now we're seeing India, the gurus, the teachers, rise up and be critical of this military occupational force. And what did they want to do? They wanted to end it. The eighth house is the ending of things. It's life and death, but it's right before sunset. So this was this was a period that the energy for him, he was going to be doing these type of things that was helping usher in the sunset or the end of the British Empire. And the British Empire really took a major blow after, not only losing, the American colonies earlier, like, a couple hundred years previously, but when they lost India, that was a really big thing for them. It was a massive source of wealth for a very long time. And Pluto here, keep in mind, Pluto is Shiva. It's the destroyer. So we have the Guru and Shiva coming together in order to be critical, in order to destroy things. And Pluto's in Bharini Nakshatra. Bharini Nakshatra is symbolized by a pregnant elephant. And elephants have one of the longest gestational periods of any animal on the planet. So when a baby elephant is born, it's ready to go, right? It can stand up within a few minutes. It can nurse, but it can also immediately pretty much start eating and digesting other food pretty quickly. The same thing here. The destruction of this British Empire and India needing to tap back into that healing, destructive force of Shiva that was inherent in them as a culture. This was something that was a long time coming. But when it happened, they were ready for it. And since then, they've really stepped back into doing what they need to have their independence. Recently, they're telling people in the West very much that they're not just going to go along with everything that people that want to take control of everything are going to say. They're their own country with their own resources and their own power and their own culture, their own beliefs, and they're going to stand up for that. In Gandhi's chart, this is where this energy really started to come in. So it's something very interesting to know that he was a teacher, he was a guru that criticized things, and he went to war. He fought for a cause. He just didn't do it in a violent way. And again, seeing Jupiter's dispositing the seventh house of relationships here, being a guide, we can see that that's what he guided people to do. This is such a beautiful chart to analyze, not only from the perspective of an individual, when we see what he did historically, and then you see how his life played out. What a wonderful thing to learn from. Something here we can see in the 10th house. The 10th house is our career, our fame, what we're known for. So being Gemini, he was known for speech, but Uranus here, I see that as Brahma. And Brahma is the creator. So he was very creative, and it's in the nakshatra of Punarvasu. Now, Punarvasu, in order to really understand it, you need to understand the previous nakshatra, which is Ardra. And Ardra is Lord Shiva. He's Rudra. It's a storm, and it's symbolized by a teardrop or also a diamond, but the teardrop's the big one. But it's a storm of destruction and of cleansing. And Punarvasu is the nakshatra that comes after, and it represents the energy that you feel after. Imagine when it goes out and rains. You have a big storm that comes through in the spring, and then you go outside and the air smells fresh and clean, and the birds are chirping, and the plants are watered, the flowers are blooming, everything is refreshed. And then the sun is going to come out again. This is Punarvasu. And Punarvasu will have this theme of repeating again and again. Okay. So we can see here that in his communication, he was very unique in the way he went about communicating things, communicating his message of what needed to be heard. And he was willing to say it again and again and again. But this is what he really became known for, is this type of thing. And he helped India create a new sense of self for itself. He brought, it had been going through that storm of occupation by the British Empire for a long time. And he helped bring in that new day, that refreshing energy. Okay. Another thing to look at here, Saturn in Jyesta Nakshatra, in the sign of Scorpio and in the third house of communication. His Aruda Lagna being here as well in Jyesta Nakshatra. So understand, as we talk about this Saturn, we're also talking about his Aruda Lagna. So this is how people really wanted to see Gandhi. Okay, this is the gift he had to give them. So Saturn is the planet of natural law, cosmic law, dedication, hard work, things that take a long time. You feel the pressure of things, and then you have to get serious about it. Jyesta Nakshatra is a nakshatra that is the nakshatra that is the home of Lord Indra. So I spoke about earlier Vishaka. It's the home of Lord Indragni, which you could see them as two different deities, but there is actually a deity that is just Indragni, that is the combination of them. So that's Vishaka. But Jyesta is just Indra by himself. Okay. So this is the nakshatra that is the throne, the home of the king of the gods. So Jyesta, just like Vishaka, will have some of those similar qualities I talked about, being goal-oriented, very strategic, very good about coordinating with people, talking to others, getting their goal achieved by bringing the strength of other people together. Now, this is going on in the sign of Scorpio, which is transformation, darkness, secrets being revealed, hidden things being revealed, transmutation, struggle. It's ruled by the sign of Mars, and it's the internal expression of Mars. So what did we see he was speaking about? Well, he's speaking about the struggle of India. And this was an internal struggle they were going on, because really, in order for them to get rid of the British, they had to unite amongst themselves. The only way the British ever gained any foothold there is because one by one, they would make a treaty with this king or with this ruler, and then they divide and conquer, how any empire works. So in order for India to resolve that, they had to come together. They had to fix those issues. They had to transmute a lot of that pain, those hidden things. And there were internal struggles. And it wasn't an easy thing to do. It required a lot of time. There was a lot of pressure. And this was something that Gandhi definitely would have felt. Now, luckily, his Mars is very well placed here and well supported. So that will help this third house a lot. But he was definitely very strategic in telling people this is our long-term goal. We need to be disciplined, and we need to fight for things. But really, the biggest lesson I think that he taught is that fight first begins within us, and we have to win that war first. And as soon as we do that, there's no enemy out there that can conquer us. So those are some very interesting things to see about his birth chart. So let me pop this down real quick and check the chat just for a couple minutes before I move in chart at all, and see if there are any questions. So Cody Hill, you've been looking forward to this one. Yeah, this is a really exciting chart. Gandhi's chart is I mean, man, you could spend a lot of time studying it, because whether you look at his Navamsha chart, his D10, his D60, they're all extremely telling and very, very useful. And for those of you who don't know, like the D9 chart, that's the chart that our Navamsha, it's the fruit. It's known as the fruited tree. It's what we really mature into. As I mentioned earlier, the D10 chart's like our chart of career, what we're known for, our chart of fame, or you could look at it as our chart of service to society. That's a really good way to look at it. So in this case, especially, and that's the next one I'll look at here, is the D10. But another chart that a lot of people don't know about, and it's actually one of the most important charts in Vedic astrology, is the D60 chart. And this chart will actually show our past life karmas. So if those of you are out there that might be interested in past life karmas and these type of things, feel free to send me an email and ask about getting your D60 chart read, and we can look into some of past life karmas, and it will also show the strength of what karmas are going to come into maturity in this incarnation. So say if you have a yoga, and the yoga is saying that you're going to have some wealth come in. Well, we can analyze the strength of those planets through different divisional charts, but the real final checkoff, that's going to be seen through the D60 chart. We're going to see how that karma is actually going to come into fruition and in what strength it will come into fruition. And then we can look at dasha cycles and transits and stuff to look at the timing of when those things will happen. Cody, you also mentioned, to do the yogas. Yeah, so that's something I'll do another time. I'll do a more in-depth study of Gandhi's chart, where we just go through the yogas and use his chart to study yogas, because he has a lot of really good ones in his. Joe Biden's chart is another one I'll do that with. Joe Biden, regardless of how well he's done in this incarnation as a human being, has a vast amount of yogas that all point towards specific political, coming to political power, being a leader, these type of things. So for the purpose of studying yogas, that's a chart I'll look at too. So maybe that's something I'll do, is do an analysis of yogas and pull a couple different charts together from like Gandhi and Biden and others, and maybe do a yoga analysis coming up soon. So let's do a couple other quick little things here, looking at the D10, just to keep this um, thorough, but also like not too long here. So in his D10 chart, which we can see here on the right, we see he's a Capricorn Lagna. We have Saturn, which is the ruler of Capricorn in the first house. Anytime you have the ruling planet in the sign, that's good, but especially in the first house. So that means in regards to his service to society, in regards to um, his fame, his career, what he was known are also they represent. So he went to India, and Capricorn and Saturn can also deal with the government. So he was of service in regards to India, helping take her sovereignty back and form her own government. Mercury being here will also be an indicator of that same thing as Jupiter retrograde. So, we can see a lot of K2 being here will show that he had a mastery of this type of thing. So in a past life, mastery of this Capricorn energy, he knew how to work very hard, and he knew how to learn how to educate himself and apply that to his goal. Now, something I want you to note here is in the birth chart, his K2 is in Capricorn in the 5th. I spoke about that, how that's going to give him, not just K2 in the 5th is going to give him a strong educational ability, but K2 in the sign of Capricorn will really do that. Well, it's still in Capricorn, but in the first house in the D10. So it's known as what is known as Virgotama. Now, as you go through all the different divisional charts, if you see a planet in the same stronger, instead of it, say for example, we're looking between the birth and Vamsha. So the birth chart's your early life, second part of your life. If you see a planet go from one sign to another, we're going to see a change in the lessons that planet deals with as that person goes on in life. If it's in a watery sign as they're younger, they're going to be more emotional. And if it moves into, say, an air sign or a fiery sign as they're older, that planet's then going to develop more masculine expressions as it gets older. But when it's Virgotama, what does that mean? What it means is dealing with the same karma, the same energy. So it's gaining more and more of a mastery of this type of thing. This is what we see going on with this K2 and Capricorn in the first. It's also going to make it to where he was a person that didn't care about himself. He was willing to cut off his own head to achieve his goal. What did I mention about him starving himself earlier? Rahu, again, being here with this Neptune in Cancer in the 7th house. So he went about that in a very unique way. Again, Rahu is a serpent energy as well. So we can see that starving of himself. And Cancer is nourishment, because it deals with the mother. So it deals with nourishment. So he, like a serpent, would not nourish himself when he needed to achieve his goal, and he is willing to cut off his own head, who he was, in order to achieve that goal. And these were the lessons, this Jupiter, these were the lessons that he brought to the world. That we see that with Jupiter, Mercury going on. Venus and Mars and Gemini in the 6th, obviously he had something to fight for. And it was dealt with relationships. He was fighting for everybody in India. And there, a lot of people disagreed. He was trying to unite different factions, the polarity that we see going on in Gemini. And this was in the 6th house, which is the house of service as well as the house of problems. So his service, in life very much is going to be seen from this first house in the D10, the 6th house, the 10th house, the 11th house, and the 12th house. All of those are really going to deal with major areas of service of how he was serving others. And you could see others like, the 9th and the 7th have importance as well, because this whole chart deals with service, but especially these positions. We see Sun in Libra in the 10th house. Now, Sun in Libra is technically debilitated, but Sun in the 10th house, the 10th house is like midday. So this is where Sun is the strongest. It gets its most directional strength here. So why he felt a little bit debilitated, because Sun is the king and Libra is the marketplace. So this is where the king has to go into the marketplace and deal with the average people, and that kind of frustrates him. He still had a very strong sense of self. He still was seen as a very good, helpful person. These type of things So, there was definitely still this play there where he still could have had a little bit of irritation going on, or as well as a little bit of just lack of confidence in his own self. That's something that can happen with Sun and Libra, as a person can um, not really feel confident in who they are and their abilities, these type of things. My son happens to be in Libra in the eighth house, and that was something when I was younger. I really had to develop my sense of self. I wasn't, on one hand, I was confident and I knew I was highly intelligent. I knew I was capable of a lot of things, but on the other, I was very self doubting. So that's something that we could have seen on that in regards to his service to the world. He was always doubting whether or not he was doing good enough and how he was serving. That's something that we could see. We could see the Aruda Lagna again being in Scorpio again, but in the 11th house. So bringing transformation to the larger social network circle. Very, very interesting things to see here. And I'll go ahead and wrap that up here. I could keep going on for hours in regards to all the different things I see. But yeah, some very interesting things. So if you guys found this enjoyable, let me know in the comments. And if you guys have any charts of anyone else that you would like me to look at, any historic events, any specific predictions, social events, whatever it is, if there's a specific analysis that you would like to see me do to help you learn astrology further, I'm more than happy to take suggestions and to do those things. I love looking at astrology for all sorts of different reasons. It is a universal tool that you're always going to gain some insight, and I never look at a chart where I don't learn something. So I'm happy to look at any charts that you guys might be interested in. I think another chart, some more charts I'm going to be getting back into doing, is I might do another chart analysis of another serial killer. So if you guys aren't familiar, you can go to my YouTube and check them out. I've done some previous serial killer chart analysis of Jeffrey Dahmer and the Iceman. So some fun ones to check out there. Well, that's going to go wrap this one up, guys. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. I appreciate you as always, and I will see you in the next one.